And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. Welcome back from a long weekend. Well, it's a long weekend for me because, of course, we don't broadcast on Mondays. I have to have a day where I just kind of, relax and get ready for the upcoming week. So that's why the program is Tuesday through Friday. Now, on Saturday's edition of the podcast, I told you the story of how the Sheridan Press is absolutely and intentionally misinforming you. I guess that's lying to you about what was happening with the Wyoming Republican Party. And if you missed the podcast, here's the whole shakedown of it. So in Wyoming statute, there are only a couple of meetings. I think there's only one meeting that has to be noticed to the public, and there's a specific time frame that it has to be noticed. The Wyoming statutes, and it's in Title 22, never mind what statute number it is. You can look it up under political parties. But anyway, it says that that elections for party officers have to be held in the month of March, and you have to notice that meeting 10 days in advance. And so, in Sheridan County, the first election meeting was set for the 22nd of March. Well, for one reason or another, they missed noticing that meeting in time. And so it was rescheduled to March 31st. Now, this past Wednesday, the officer from I'm having trouble keeping my Republican Party straight. The Sheridan County Republican Party went down to the Sheridan Press, which is the paper of record here in Sheridan. Oh, yeah, that's the other part that the statute says. You have to notice this meeting in the paper of record, which is an outdated, vestige of when newspapers actually mattered. Now, the truth is there are a lot of people that read the newspaper, but the vast majority of people don't get their news from the Sheridan Press or the Buffalo Bull Crap or the Casper Star Tribune, the Pravda on the Platte. Most people get their news from online sources, whatever those sources are be. Well, anyway, we still have a law that public notices have to be published in the newspaper of record. And so on Wednesday, the Sheridan County Republican Party went in and ordered an ad. And they didn't hear anything back. So on Thursday, that same officer, it was Todd Windsor, the state committee man for the Sheridan Republican Party, he sends an email. And it's got all the dimensions and everything. That email is available at cowboystatepolitics.com on the show content page if you want to take a look at it. Anyway, so he officially orders the ad, and then he gets a response back from the Sheridan Press. And they say, yep, we got it. We've sent the ad to production. which in newspaper speak means that, they went ahead with it. Well, then in Friday's edition of the Sheridan Press, and I haven't come up with a proper name for this paper yet. They deserve one because listen to this crap. Quote, as of 9 a.m. Friday morning, the party had not filed a public notice with the Sheridan Press to notify Sheridanites of its public meeting scheduled for March 31st, which would mean that the party failed to meet its deadline. Seems a little bit curious, don't you think? That we have an email from the Sheridan Press saying, we've got your ad, we're sending it to production, and will be printed. Well, it gets even more curious, and I don't know if you can see this on the camera or not, but right here is the legal notice that they're saying the party didn't provide. And so, fascinating, right? You can't make this stuff up, that the Sheridan Press is claiming that there's a problem with the elections meeting of the Republican Party right beside the ad that notices that meeting. So a blatant attempt to interfere in political elections. Absolutely it is. It's an attempt to give the other side, the redcoats, a narrative at the meeting. See, these conservatives, they don't really know what they're doing. They've been mismanaging the party for years, blah, blah, blah. They can't even notice the meeting right. So that's what it was. Well, on Saturday's edition of the podcast, I exposed it all. That's kind of a bad way to put it. But anyway, I exposed the malfeasance of the Sheridan Press, and the response to that episode has been tremendous. Now, as of yet, and the other part of this is that I did reach out to the Sheridan Press and ask them for comment. I sent an email to Ashley Snoozy, the acting editor of the paper. Let me just check my email real quick. Nope, no reply from Ashley Snoozy or Joseph Badet, the guy that wrote the article. However, if you listen to the podcast, there's a clear explanation of what that email said, and you can get all caught up. But as of this 10 seconds, really don't have an update. I just wanted to fill you in on something you may have missed on the podcast. And again, a screenshot of this article, the one that includes the legally required ad, the email that we received, that the party received from the Sheridan Press, as well as the Facebook post they made. So the Sheridan Press went out of their way to perpetuate this bullcrap, and they got caught. And, of course, it is Cowboy State Politics that caught them. Other news. So I think it was last week. I did an episode last Monday, I think it was. The episode is called They're Just as Crazy Here. And it was a report of a Sheridan County Democrat Central Committee meeting in which there was some crazy stuff said. And one of the operatives of Cowboy State Politics was in attendance and was able to record that meeting. And one of the more shocking, probably the most shocking part of the audio is about this guy named Gabriel Green. Now, he is a political operative. I think he's an opportunist. There's a couple reasons for that, because he was palling around with a couple of libertarian groups. And then he shows up at the Democrat Party meeting and he says, I loathe those people. Loathe is the word he used. Well, anyway, during the course of that episode, I absolutely said, hey, Gabriel Green, you are absolutely welcome on Cowboy State Politics. Let's sit down. Let's talk. Let's have a little chat. Well, he reached out to me. And so at some point in the future, when I figure out my very busy schedule, I'm going to sit down with Gabriel Green and we're going to talk about his political ideology, where he's at. It should be a fascinating conversation. I don't really have any specific dates for you yet when that would happen. Like I said, again, I've got to arrange a couple of things to make that happen, but I will keep you updated. So on today's program, there's a state that's trying to classify Trump derangement syndrome as a mental illness. Well, we all know that it is. But now there's a state that wants to legally recognize it as such. And, this might come as a shocking bit of news to you. Generation Z has emerged as one of the the most conservative generation in a really long time. And no doubt they are what pushed President Trump over the electoral edge, over the 270 electoral vote mark. And there's a couple of pieces that have been written about that. I think they're fascinating because it was the Democrats' assumption that they would have young people because, I mean, it's the old adage, right? If you're not a socialist when you're 20, you probably don't have a heart. But if you're not a conservative by the time you're 40, you definitely don't have a brain. I, your illustrious host, have been a conservative, so says my mother, since I was about 5. So your host has never wavered in his conservatism. But anyway, Generation Z, they're pretty conservative. So we're going to talk about that. And then if we get to it, of course, we've got some updates on the deportation illegal alien front. Trump's now saying leave to the people that Biden issued these so-called pardons to. Not his family, the illegal immigrant pardons. He's saying leave or be deported. And then if we get to it, it's strange, man. If you enact tariffs, you get a lot of money. So let's begin at the top. Adam Kinzinger has revealed what happens when Trump derangement syndrome takes over your life. From The Blaze, in an article, and I quote, "When a case of Trump derangement syndrome goes untreated, it has the ability to control your actions, control your words, and ultimately to take over your life." And in a selfie video shot from his car, former Representative Adam Kinzinger documented the progress of his ailment and posted it to social media for all the world to see. Quote, listen to this. And by the way, what is up with people taking selfie videos in their car? It's not like you couldn't find a better backdrop. You couldn't find a sunset or maybe a mountain range or something in the background. Maybe just a picture hanging in your house, a blank wall, something. Why is it always in your car? And I mean, maybe that's the only place that folks can find that's quiet and they won't be disturbed. But seriously, I'm getting sick of it. They're dumb. Find a better place. Sit down, have a conversation, be a normal person. Well, of course, this is Adam Kinzinger we're talking about. So being a normal person is probably straight out. Anyway, here's what he said in the video. Quote, "So I just saw that Trump is like threatening the January 6th committee again. Listen, this dude knows. He knows that this is like the thing that embarrasses him. He won't admit it, embarrasses him, because he's trying to pretend like he didn't do anything. Oh my God." But it goes on. "He's obsessed. He's more obsessed with, me and Cheney and his freaking golf score. Hey, Trump, bring it on, dude. You weak, whiny, tiny man who, by the way, I saw a picture of you this weekend. You're hiking up your pants now, just below your man boobs, and you're sweating so much, looking pretty, bad. Oh, my God." And now, Adam Kinzinger, he was in Congress. No doubt he made a crap load of money. I mean, he was a redcoat the entire time. He was one of the 2 alleged Republicans on the January 6th committee. And then he got beat because his constituents, now his former constituents, found out exactly who he is, and they booted him from office. And I mean, there was some talk at the time that he was not going to run again. I don't even know. I mean, but the end of it is he's not in Congress anymore. So you don't have to deal with the day in, day out doldrums of being at the Capitol and devoting your entire life to destroying Trump. Man, pick up your own golf game. Go fishing. Buy a motorcycle. Go do something. But these videos that you're putting out, absolutely stupid and embarrassing. But when Trump derangement syndrome takes over your entire life, you end up sitting in your car complaining about the guy that you tried to prosecute, and then you destroyed all evidence of said prosecution. I mean, just give it up and go do something else. There's a lot of people at PMSNBC that were former so-called Republicans. Michael Steele, for example, you could go hang out with him. You could talk about how liberal you are and how you tried to dupe conservatives into voting for you. I mean, whatever. But just stay out of your car, stop doing videos, and for the love of God, man, seek help with your mental illness. Well, there is a state, and let's see here if I've got it. I've got it somewhere here. Oh, yeah. It's on a webpage. Here we go. From the Palm Beach Post. Article entitled, it was published in USA Today, one of the outlets, and it's entitled, "One State Wants to Classify Trump Derangement Syndrome as a Mental Illness." Here's 7 things to know about that. Quote, There's nothing funny about mental illness. It is estimated that more than 1 in 5 U.S. adults live with mental illness. 59.3 million in 2022, or 23.1% of the U.S. population. Now, 5 Republicans in the Minnesota Senate want to add Trump derangement syndrome to the state's definition of mental illness. What is Trump derangement syndrome? It is and so says the article, it's a derogatory term used to describe a form of toxic criticism and negative reaction to former President Trump's statements and political actions, according to Alex Patakos of Psychology Today in 2024. Let's see here. The phrase Trump derangement syndrome was coined by the late political columnist and commentator Charles Krauthammer, a takeoff of his earlier usage of Bush derangement syndrome in 2003. Well, now there's Minnesota Bill Senate File 2589, and it wants to include Trump derangement syndrome in the definition of mental illness. And let's see here. Here we go. It describes the so-called Trump derangement syndrome as, quote, the acute onset of paranoia in otherwise normal persons that is in reaction to the policies and presidencies of President Donald J. Trump. Symptoms may include Trump-induced general hysteria, which produces an inability to distinguish between legitimate policy differences and signs of psychic pathology in President Donald J. Trump's behavior. This may be expressed by verbal expressions of intense hostility towards President Donald Trump, Adam Kinzinger, overt acts of aggression and violence against anyone supporting President Donald J. Trump, or anything that symbolizes President Donald J. Trump. Now, quote, people of different political persuasions can differ when discussing issues, says Minnesota Senator Glenn Gruenhagen, one of the 5 GOP sponsors of the bill. Quote, we should be able to have civil debates without demonstrating violent and unreasonable reactions, such as burning down Tesla dealerships, threatening people who wear Trump hats, or committing road rage at the sight of a Trump bumper sticker. Well, it might be an officially recognized mental condition in Minnesota. We already know it is unofficially recognized everywhere else. Adam, go get a job. Do something different. Stop with the TDS. Back in a minute. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia, Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada.
Straight to hell.
Iceland,
France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to continue to expand. The program can be viewed on YouTube, Facebook, X, Rumble, the Cowboy State Politics Podcast. Just search for the name Cowboy State Politics or your illustrious host, and you'll find Cowboy State Politics. Welcome back to the program, my friends. If you want to be part of the show this morning, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989 is the number in the Cowboy State Politics studio. A bit of update from the lead story this morning about the Sheridan Press. By the way, if you've come up with a name, a creative name, something that describes the Sheridan Press in more more explicit, not explicit. That's definitely leading you down the wrong road. But a more descriptive name for the Sheridan Press. Make sure that you send me a message. You can get me on Messenger, any social media app. You can probably find me Twitter or X. Shoot me a message. And if you want to find me on X, my handle is David Dom Iverson. Or if, obviously, you can just send a message to Cowboy State Politics on Facebook. But we need a new name for the Sheridan Press. And I've been turning over possibilities in my head, and I just can't rest on one of them. So maybe with your help, we can figure out some more descriptive term. And kind of an update to our top story, the Sheridan Press claims that they're going to be coming out with an article in the next week or so about the difference between a public notice and an advertisement later this week or next. Now, the fact that they won't be specific about it is proof that they're a bunch of hot air, that they're full of crap. And as I showed you at the top of the broadcast, this is the Friday, and if you're watching, of course you're watching on the camera, this is the Friday edition of the Sheridan Compress. No, that doesn't work. Anyway, so here's the ad right here. And to legally notice a meeting, all you got to do is put it in the newspaper with an ad so that people know what it is. And anyway, that's what the Sheridan Republican Party did, and now the Sheridan Press is saying they're coming out with an article later this week or early next week about the difference between an advertisement and a public notice. Now, the responsible thing for them to do would be what a lot of respectable journalists do: issue a retraction. And that's easy. Admit you made a mistake, admit you were wrong, issue a retraction. That's what I do when I'm wrong. I lead with my mistake. I tell you, hey, I need to correct this. I said this on a particular program. I was wrong. Here's the truth about it. You lead with your mistakes. And the reason why you do that as a journalist is it goes to your integrity, right? Somebody that never admits that they made a mistake, they have zero integrity, because last time I checked, there's only one being in this universe that's perfect, and it's not you, Sheridan Press, and it's not any one of us, it's God. And so every single person makes a mistake, and as a journalist, you should admit them when you do. And your readers will respect you more if you say, hey, I goofed this one up. Here's the real story. Sorry, I'll work hard not to let it happen again. Well, one of the reasons why Cowboy State Politics, I can say that we are almost always right 99% of the time, is because I check my sources. It's all I do. I get people all the time that send me messages. Hey, this is going on in this county. This person said this, and usually my reaction is there a recording of it? Do you have some documents about it? Because if it's not recorded and you don't have any documents, then it may as well have not happened. And I'm not really going to talk about it if I can't prove that it happened. Now, I'll provide some conjecture about it. I'll theorize about something, but I can't tell you definitively if something happened or not, if there's no proof. And the Sheridan Press, hey, I hope you're listening. Ashley Snoozy, really, you wrote an article about me that you published an op-ed about me. Not you personally, but you published somebody else's op-ed in the paper. You see there how I'm being specific? That's all you got to do, Snoozy. But anyway, you published somebody's op-ed that called me a liar. Yeah, in those terms. And here it is in your own paper. Yeah, it's right here. Yeah, anyway. Okay, enough of that fun. Well, if you want to be part of the program, the phone number in the studio, 307-374-8989. Whatever's on your mind, we'll talk about it. Now, Chuck Schumer and the Democrats, they have a new anti-Trump message, and it's creative, and it's engaging, and it's catchy. You won't be able to get it out of your head. Well, or not. Well, he was talking to Kristen Welker. He'll make Trump the quickest lame duck in modern history. And I quote, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer told NBC News anchor Kristen Welker he plans to make President Donald Trump the quickest lame duck in recent history in response to critics. Now, let me just take a quick aside here. What is a lame duck? A lame duck is a politician that cannot run for re-election anymore and experiences waning influence. And so, when you're the governor or you're the president, and you're in the last days or last year or whatever of your office, and you really don't have any influence anymore because people aren't focused on you anymore. They're looking at who the next guy is going to be or gal. That's what they call a lame duck, right? That you can't run for office anymore. Your influence is kind of waning, and you really can't do a whole heck of a lot. Well, when you are in the first 100 days of your presidency, you're not a lame duck, Chucky boy. In fact, you've got mostly 4 years worth of influence to go. So the Senate Democrat leader has faced a blizzard of criticism from his party after he helped pass a continuing resolution to avoid another government shutdown. Schumer sat for an interview on Sunday morning's edition of NBC's Meet the Press and appeared to be testing out his new slogan in response to critics who say he hasn't done enough to fight. Now, I know this is painful, but to get the full context of what I'm talking about, let's play him in his own words. Here is Chuck Schumer. Maybe. There we go.
We will win. We will win. We will win.
I told you it was catchy. Isn't that amazing? Okay, no, that's not the end of it.
Leader Schumer, what do you say to members of your own party who feel like that type of resistance is not meeting the enormity of this moment, this political fight that's required?
Well, I said, that was one day and one line, but we are fighting in every way, in the courts, in oversight, in legislation, in organizing, and we're united. Hakeem and I are united. Our caucuses are united in moving forward on that way. And I think if we fight, as I said, we can make Donald Trump the quickest lame duck in recent history. His Republican...
God, he's so boring. It's no wonder why Generation Z or younger voters are shying away from the Democrat Party, because and I have said this over and over on the program, they literally have no depth on their bench. Thursday is opening day of baseball season. I'm pretty excited about that. And all baseball teams are working on their back bench. That is, how are they going to get through the season? What sort of players do they need to be successful? You got to have some in reserve. You got to have some good people in your farm team. But your starting roster can only be 26 people. So you got to kind of, whittle things down. But, in the case of you have an injury, my Texas Rangers last year were plagued with injuries, and so they had to have some people to replace them. Well, same thing holds true in politics. You got to have a back bench. You have to have people to replace them. Now, let's just take a minute and think about who the backbenchers are for the Democrats. Well, there's that guy in Pennsylvania. Yeah, he's kind of a moderate Democrat, but the reason why Kamala Harris didn't pick him, he's a Jew. Of course, Kamala Harris isn't going to pick him. How anti-Semitic can you possibly be, by the way? Kamala Harris not picking a guy, and one of the main reasons the media comes out with is, well, he's Jewish. I would think that would be an asset to your administration, but this is another reason why I'm not a Democrat. And he's a moderate. The Democrat Party has moved so far left, embracing the policies of Bernie Sanders. Bernie and AOC were out in Colorado over the weekend campaigning. They had to pay people to show up to their rally, too. Anyway, pure socialism, verging on communism. And in case they hadn't noticed, America has moved far beyond that. We're living in an age where podcasts, that is, individual, free, and independent media played a significant role in electing Donald Trump. Politicians, not just Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, of course, she did a terrible job, but they're recognizing that people that start their own businesses, that is, people like me and Joe Rogan. Of course, my show is in no comparison to Joe Rogan's, but still, they played an outsized role in determining who the president is. And that's independent media. The big five media sources, they don't really matter anymore. It's individual people. And so when you look at the new generation, most of them don't even look at the New York Times or PMSNBC or CNN. Those outlets are seeing a significant drop in their circulation and viewership. Most legacy media sources are on the verge of bankruptcy simply because they don't have the viewers, because most younger voters aren't buying their bull crap. And the reason for that is they've been lying for so long, and those lies have been exposed. So anyway, that's one of the reasons why the Democrats are losing here. And, when you're talking, let's go back to their lack of a backbench. They've got Hakeem Jeffries. Ooh, he's super exciting. What about Cory Booker? Yeah. Okay. Didn't he run for president once and get clobbered? And then there's Jasmine Crockett. I mean, she is going off the rails. AOC. Yeah, she's really going to get elected. Really, there isn't anybody that, I have put a lot of thought into this, my friends. Who would be the Democrat nominee for the next presidential election? Who is that going to be? I can't think of a single person that could garner enough, that it is popular enough and that could garner enough support to even run for the presidency. I mean, maybe there's that guy up in Pennsylvania, but there again, I don't think the Democrats would accept him simply because they've moved so far to the left that he may as well be a Republican. The lovely Christine and I were talking about this the other night, we were discussing, what we haven't seen in the JFK files, what we were hoping we would see. And I just made the comment, and I think this is pretty true, that if JFK were alive today, he would not be a Democrat. There's no way that he would be a member of the Democrat Party. They are way too far to the left, and they've pretty much abandoned their voter base. Their voter base used to be active young people. I was going to get to this episode, but we'll take a break. And when I come back, we're going to talk about how Generation Z is the most conservative generation in decades. And it's two Democrats that are saying that. I got some sound from John Fetterman saying that that's true. He used to be cool, kind of, till he, decided he can't wear a suit to work. Maybe that's cool, but he's a Democrat, and most young people, they're not down with that. We'll be back.
Here at U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing power of U.S. paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital. For more than 35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time we give up on the values that made our state great to accommodate toxic culture. I say it's time to stand tall and protect the values that have served Wyoming well for over 134 years. Join Honor Wyoming as we defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life. Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy state politics microphone, the most powerful microphone in all of Wyoming politics. Now, I mentioned over the weekend, and I think it was last week, an episode with Ken Pendergraft, that we're working on some changes for the live program, and we're pretty excited. I'm pretty excited about them. It's you always have to continue to improve and expand, and we've got some plans to do that. On the desk here at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, let me just reach over here. Just one of the things that I left out of the stack, and maybe this will give you an idea of what I've got planned. But here in this little black case, let me just show it to you. Wait a minute. Oh. Another silver Cowboy State Politics microphone. I'm pretty excited about what's going to happen in the coming weeks, and I will give you more details as the days and weeks go by. Actually, I'm thinking about probably not this week, but next week we'll be able to unveil some of this stuff. But anyway, super excited. The program's going to continue to expand, and I'm really happy to show it to you. So before the break, we were talking about how the Generation Z really is not following the Democrat Party anymore. And there's a pretty good article that was written I think it was in Fox News. But it's entitled, New York Times writer says the Democrats are, quote, getting destroyed, as data shows that Generation Z is the most conservative generation in a decade. Who would have guessed that, right? Young people that we constantly deride as being out of touch. And, think about how many shows I've done talking about the weird stuff that's coming out of universities and colleges. Well, turns out Generation Z, super conservative. And I quote, the Democrat has been candid, John Fetterman is who they're talking about, has been candid with his party about why they lost the 2024 election, specifically among young American males. New York Times columnist Ezra Klein spoke with a Democratic pollster Tuesday about how the dream of an ascendant Democrat majority is imploding as younger voters, especially white men, flee the party. Klein interviewed David Shore, the head of data science at Blue Rose Research, a Democratic polling firm, for his podcast in an episode entitled Democrats Need to Face Why Trump Won. When Klein and Shore reviewed numerous charts, including one headlined 2024 Democratic support by age split by race and gender, the pollster explained that in this chart in particular, one thing that you can notice is that among 18-year-olds, women of color are the only one of the four groups, race and gender demographic groups, that Harris won. Trump narrowly won non-white men. The Times columnist seized on one shocking finding in the data that defies one of the Democrat Party's core beliefs. Quote, I find this part of this chart shocking. I sometimes talk about the narrative violations, and if we knew anything about Donald Trump 8 years ago, it was that young people didn't like him. And Republicans had been maybe throwing away young voters for generations in order to run up their margins among seniors, Klein said. But if you look at this chart, 75-year-old white men supported Kamala Harris at a significantly higher rate than 20-year-old white men. It's a real shift, Shore agreed. This is the first time that this is the thing I've been most shocked about in the last 4 years, that young people have gone from being the most progressive generation since baby boomers, and maybe even in some ways more so, to becoming potentially the most conservative generation that we've experienced in the last 50 to 60 years. The data expert went on to discuss what he called the scariest chart in this entire presentation, which shows the massive and historically unusual polarization between young men and women. Quote, "What's crazy is that if you look at people under the age of 30, the gender gap has exploded. 18-year-old men were 23 percentage points more likely to support Donald Trump than 18-year-old women, which is just completely unprecedented in American politics." And now, while he argued that it is still too early to explain why, Shore observed that there are similar patterns in countries like Canada, the UK, and Norway. Quote, "There's a lot of research to do here, but it's still very striking," Shore said. "It's similar to how a lot of people talk about the Democratic young men problem, and it's still somehow underrated because the actual numbers are just a lot worse than people think. It's because the Democrat Party has lost touch with their traditional liberal base." John Fetterman was on The View. I know. Don't worry. There isn't any sound of Joyless Behar or Whoopi Goldberg on this one. But Fetterman's talking about this very thing, how the Democrats have lost the younger generation. Listen to what John Fetterman says here.
And here we are now. And now whether it's bros or the manosphere and all these, I mean, clearly those are negative kinds of terms. And if you talk down with them or you make them part of the problem, or it's all because of you and your fault, then of course they're going to find an alternative, and that's what they've done that. And, you know, I believe in having a conversation on anyone that's playing it straight. I think we should be talking to as many people as possible, and it's undeniable the Democrats have lost a lot with men. And I'm not sure where we're able to bring that back without a long-term kind of a strategy to re-engage them, because it's undeniable. There's been serious erosion.
Serious erosion. It is undeniable that they've lost what was their traditional voting base. And the reasons that Fetterman lists are, I think, self-evident. But let's just go through just real quick. How many times have Democrats, the progressive establishment, the Democrat Party, how many times has there been a cause or a movement or a political talking point that demonized young men? Just think about it. The Me Too movement, where we have to trust all women, and we saw an explosion in cases of women claiming that they were sexually assaulted 20, 30 years ago with no proof whatsoever. The entire movement, the Me Too movement, belied our criminal justice system, that you're innocent until proven guilty, that if there's an accusation, it has to be proven before you're found guilty. And that wasn't the case with the Me Too movement. How many people had their lives destroyed just because of an accusation with zero proof whatsoever? Probably the best example of that was during the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, where, you know, there was, what is her name? Blasey Ford came out and said, "Oh no, he sexually assaulted me at this party." And there was no evidence of it. There was no witnesses to it. It was just her words. And the Democrats went full bore against it. Or what about the Women's March the day after Trump's first election, where Washington, D.C. was filled with a whole bunch of women wearing those stupid pink hats? And it was pro women, and, you know, to heck with you if you're a man. But there have been a series of narratives coming from the Democrat establishment and the Democrat Party that demonize young men. Now, look at the opposite. What has Trump been saying for the last decade? That we need to get back to our founding principles, that we need to get back to success, that capitalism is good, that you can, like, if you just put your mind to it and you work hard, you can be successful. He supported business, drill baby drill, driving costs down. And when you're, and that's another big one that I don't think that the Democrats have figured out yet. Young families. You get married right now. First of all, you're not going to be able to afford a house, well, in Wyoming anyway. And, you know, it is very, very difficult to raise a young family because of the inflation driven by the Democrats, the rampant money printing, and the absolute disregard for the finances of of young families is leading into this because what is the number one thing that people vote on? It's not ideology. It's not their platform, although we would hope that would play into it. It's their pocketbook. Most people vote with their pocketbook. And the question that was raised, before Ronald Reagan, but I think that Ronald Reagan probably popularized it. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Are you? I mean, well, with Trump in office, I think already we were better off than we were 2 years ago. But that's a question that young families answer, right? And when you're sitting around the dinner table and you're paying bills or trying to pay bills, as the case may be, when it costs $3 and $4 a gallon to put gas in your car, and grocery prices are through the roof, and you're paying $7 a dozen for eggs, the young family has to look at that and say, "This is crazy." We have to get back to our foundational principles, and those were being supported by the Republicans and Donald Trump. And because and we talk a lot about the Democrat Party being out of touch, but I think that's just I think that's just overbroad. It's a generalization. It's true. It's absolutely true. But I don't think that it carries any specifics to it. And so when you get down to it, think about what are the things that young people are focused on: getting a job, making a living, starting a family, paying their bills. I talked about the election and how independent voices played an outsized role in the election. Well, those are independent people like myself that started their own business and are trying to participate in the political, the political narrative. Well, those people played an outsized role in the election. Now compare that, and let's talk about the two types of voices here. So Kamala Harris focused on podcasts that were decidedly liberal, very progressive. The Call Her Daddy podcast. Well, the truth is that most people who listen to talk radio, and I'm not saying most people who listen to podcasts are this way, but most people who listen to politics and political podcasts and political talk radio, they're not liberals. They're conservatives. And so when Trump reached out to those individuals, Joe Rogan, and I don't remember the rest of them, but, independent podcasts, he knew that he was reaching younger voters. And the news reporting is that was Barron Trump that pushed him to do that, no doubt. But it was a brilliant move because he was able to reach disaffected voters who were, traditionally more Democratic, but are facing real life situations that the previous administration absolutely ignored. You add on top of that the Democrat Party's proclivity to control every aspect of your life. I mean, that just feeds back into the reasons why young men are gravitating towards the Republican Party, because they don't want to be controlled. Trump represented freedom, and that is freedom from the Democrat policies that tell you what kind of light bulb you have to put in your house and what kind of car you can drive, and what kind of stove you can put in your house. And I mean, the list is long and distinguished, but all of it played into why, all of those things are reasons why young formerly Democrat men are moving towards Republicans, because they see that it is Donald Trump and the Republicans who are providing real solutions to actual real problems. So when you look at this question that Ezra Klein and the Democrats are trying to answer, why are we losing young men? Well, it's because you're not paying attention to them. I mean, it's not rocket science here. Talk about freedom, talk about being successful, raising your own family, making your own choices, and just speak the truth. And people are going to come your way over and over and over again. The Democrats, they should just give up. I wish they would. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website CowboyStatePolitics.com under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, CowboyStatePolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. And we already talked about why the Sheridan Press can't even get close to that number. Well, it's because they lie, and they won't admit when they're wrong. Baseball is the regular season starts on Thursday, my friends, and I can't tell you how excited I am. Of course, if you're a longtime listener of Cowboy State Politics, you know that I am a diehard in-the-wool Texas Rangers fan, and last night, though it was still spring training, it was the first game at Arlington. They put on a show, a couple different home runs, 2 or 3, I think. And, it was a fun game to watch. The first game that the lovely Christine sat down and watched with me. She likes the Texas Rangers, but she won't sit down. She doesn't like to watch, a game every single day. I don't really blame her. But in a moment of baseball zen, here's a little bit of what happened last night.
And he sends it into that second deck in left field. Impressive.
Well, that's quick. That's 2 games in a row for the Rangers to get a leadoff home run. This time it's a 91-mile-an-hour fastball right down the middle, and Marcus is ready to swing and keeps this one just fair into that second deck.
391 feet. Jock Peterson. Oh boy, hammers that ball. Deep out to right and gone! And that's another really fun image we can get used to.
That's right, my friends. That's an image that I can get used to. Jock Peterson sending one way out of the park. Well, there's your moment of baseball zen. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Trump's tariffs, and fear-mongering really is what it is. And if you compare it to what happened the last time Trump was president, it's just a repeat. It's the syndicated narrative coming out of the Democrat Party. That's a phrase that I need to write down. Syndicated narrative of the Democrat Party. Anyway, it's, Trump is destroying the economy. Nobody has any certainty. We're going to, all of these companies are going to leave. Well, the truth is that as it was last time, none of that is true. From Reuters, UAE, the United Arab Emirates, has committed to $1.4 trillion in U.S. investment, according to the White House. The United Arab Emirates has committed to a 10-year, $1.4 trillion investment framework in the United States after top UAE officials met President Trump this week. The framework will substantially increase the UAE's existing investments in the United States economy in AI infrastructure, semiconductors, energy, and manufacturing. The White House did not outline how UAE investments would reach $1.4 trillion, with some of the deals unveiled as part of the framework having already been announced. The only fully new deal appeared to be an investment by Emirates Global Aluminum in what would be the first new aluminum smelter in the United States in the last 35 years. The White House said adding the plant would, quote, nearly double the U.S. domestic aluminum production. Developing a primary aluminum smelter in the U.S. has been part of the EGA's ambitions for several years, a spokesman with the firm said. The UAE, an oil producer and longtime security partner of the U.S., is looking to deepen investment ties with Washington and is emerging as a global leader in AI. One of the sectors it is betting on to diversify its economy away from energy. Just one example of how companies see exactly what Donald Trump is doing. That is protecting United States interests for the first, and I mean, it worked the first time he was president. Why would a country not want to protect the industries that exist in that country? Why would you want to favor other countries over your own? Well, it's all politics, my friends, and a lot of this goes back to the Bill Clinton administration when he gave China most favored nation status. And basically what he did is allowed China to flood the U.S. market with cheap goods. And in many cases, U.S. manufacturers just couldn't compete. It just costs more money to produce goods here. Now, I remember when I was growing up that you'd walk into a store and there was the rack that said USA made. And, my family, we didn't have a lot of money. You didn't feel like we were poor, but I guess, if you look at the math, probably were. But we never really got to go to the rack that said USA made on it because those were always more expensive because they're always better quality. They were always, clothes that would last, products that would last. You buy something from China. Remember the old joke? Well, it comes from China. Of course it's going to break. Well, the Clinton administration started the process of flooding the United States with cheap and poorly made products. And that continued all the way to the first Trump administration. And I mean, they're still flooding our market. But Donald Trump was the first person to go after the trade imbalance with China. And it's not to destroy the economy. He knows exactly what he's doing. And this UAE commitment is just one example of what you're going to see with these tariffs. Well, why would tariffs have that type of result? Because if you're in business, you don't want to pay more to be able to bring your goods to market. You want to do it as quickly and efficiently as possible. And so, it makes sense for you to invest in the United States. If you want to sell your goods here, open a plant here. There's been a lot of car companies that looked at that and said, well, yeah, that makes sense. We're selling most of our cars in the United States, so why not manufacture them there? That's the whole point, to build business, to build the U.S. economy. And this is yet another reason why the Democrats have really missed the boat on this because, for so long, for definitely the last 4 years, we've been dealing with an administration that they're not interested in business. Well, they are. They're interested in punishing business, in laying the blame on any sort of independent businessman that they can, and that is the opposite of what Donald Trump is doing. And it's providing dividends, if you'll pardon the pun. Well, we burned through another busy broadcast hour on the program. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to the program. I couldn't do what I do without you. And so thank you for listening. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. But stay tuned to the program. We'll be back tomorrow with a brand new episode of Cowboy State Politics Live. And maybe, just maybe, with some updates of what's happening, what I'm planning, what I'm up to, what you might be seeing in the coming weeks. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. We'll see you tomorrow.